One of the interesting fantasies of the Undertale phenomenon was this idea that Toby Fox was this based video game composer. Not only did he entirely create this amazing soundtrack by himself, he also allows other people to use it on YouTube for free. This was like a major talking point early on. This was something that a lot of people were bringing up, that like, oh, Toby Fox could easily copyright claim his content, but he allows his fans to use them for fan parodies, for their own use, because he's just that fond of the community. He loves us that much. That was the narrative, 10 years ago. And the reality is quite a bit different. To this day, music is getting claimed from Undertale in spite of Toby Fox's insistence that he doesn't want this, that he never wanted this, that this is not something he wanted to do, that there's some contrived reason for it. And the reality is, Toby Fox is not who he says he is, okay? The simple fact of the matter is, Undertale was always a plant game. Toby Fox always had a bunch of backing from people in the industry. Toby Fox has always been like this kind of, plant that's been trying to like force Japanese game devs to become more accepting of like foreigners. Like Toby Fox is a complete and utter shill with corporate backing. And what that means is that Toby Fox does not actually own his music because, first of all, he plagiarized it to begin with. But second of all, the company he worked with, like the company that, he does not own, right? The company he works with is copyright claiming Undertale related content automatically because, that's how it works, right? Like it's not being manually, they're not manually going after it. It's like an automated thing. And even though Toby Fox insists that like, no, I don't want this, like I love my fans, like it keeps happening. And that's kind of the situation we're in now, right? Where the narrative of Undertale being this like indie darling has kind of just completely collapsed. We're at that point now where people are starting to make YouTube videos talking about like how poorly run Yacht Club Games is. A similar kind of indie success story 10 years ago, right? Shovel Knight came out. It was this huge cultural phenomenon. It paved the way for indie devs, right? Shovel Knight was like way more popular and successful than Undertale ever was. And yet it didn't have these kinds of like, it didn't have the autistic fan base for one. And now it's kind of like fallen off to the point where like, people really have no faith in the follow-up product. Like Toby Fox is a really interesting like counterpoint to that because Toby Fox was never that popular. He was never that talked about. What he had was a bunch of sycophants trying to meme him into relevancy, right? Trying to present him as like this huge cultural like, phenomenon, woke indie dev, right? But like, not only did the game never take off, not only did Undertale never leave any real impact at all, Toby Fox has been failing to put out any kind of follow-up for over a decade, and all of his attempts to do so have just kind of fallen flat on their face, And not only that, like we have situations like this, which show that like Fox is not in a position where he can even do control his like pre-existing material, like the music for Undertale was plagiarized, it was stolen, and that's why there are all these issues with like the rights to it because Fox tried partnering with this corporation to try and like legitimize himself as like a genuine composer, and now they're going after they're automatically taking down uses of the music on YouTube, and it's resulting in like a huge like conflict between like the narrative. If Toby Fox is this based independent developer who loves the fans, who does everything for them, who's doing it out of passion, like why exactly did he sign with this company? Why exactly is this happening? It seems to be a very specifically like Undertale thing. Like. And what we're seeing is just this kind of refusal from the community to acknowledge that, first of all, this is a problem, And second of all, that it goes against the very narrative as to like who Toby Fox is and what he stands for. You know, the reality is he signed as many deals as he possibly could to try and legitimize himself as like a Japanese game developer, and it just completely fell flat on his face. You know, he did not become popular. He is not talked about. Nobody cares about this guy or what he does. And this is the end result of it. Like these days, the only time you ever hear anything about him is during these kind of situations in which people start realizing that, like, wait, what do you mean? Like Undertale music is copyrighted. Like, why could I not use this on my channel? You know, it's becoming a big problem, especially considering the only people who talk about Undertale at all are like YouTubers and general shills. You know, people in the community that are desperate to try and promote Toby Fox's brand. So this is how it ends, honestly. Like, we're kind of in like the tail end of like Undertale's relevancy cycle. Like, we're nearing the point where like no one's going to be talking about this at all, you know. And like another 10 years of this, and this thing will be completely forgotten. And even now, you know, it feels like this thing has no real momentum outside of like the terminally online woke gaming community. It's like this thing was kept afloat entirely due to autism and just an inability of the general like gaming public to accept that this Western like indie developer wasn't that great, that he wasn't that spectacular, that like there was nothing really about him that was unique or interesting. But yeah, he was still put on a pedestal for several years, and rather embarrassingly was propped up as this example of like a success story in indie games, when in actuality it was a complete and total failure. And this is another example of that. You know, a lot of these indie success stories are turning out to be long-term failures. You know, we're seeing this now with Silksong, right? You know, huge drop off in relevancy after Hollow Knight. You know, we saw this with like, you know, Shovel Knight with the DLCs. They got less relevant with time, and now we're straight up seeing that like Mina the Hollower could straight up bury the company. You know, and now we're seeing situations like this, right, where Toby Fox tried putting out Deltarune. He tried putting out chapters 3 and 4 to coincide with the Switch 2 release to get people to talk about it. Didn't happen, and now he's just kind of like constantly just sitting there trying to cope and seethe about why people aren't allowed to use the music that he supposedly owns. You know, that's the reality of what we're seeing here, is that we're beginning to see like the legend of Toby Fox just kind of unravel in real time. And it is glorious to see. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and it's only a matter of time until the fans like turn on this guy. You know, it's only a matter of time until Toby Fox just says or does something that just alienates the entire community. It is, I would say, the instant that like Toby Fox is kind of seen, like people outside of his like direct sphere start noticing like what this guy has been doing for the past decade. That's when it follows. That's when people start making fun of him, and that's when it falls apart. But like, who knows when that's going to happen? It's very interesting seeing his slow decline into irrelevancy. But you know, this is the end result. You know, like Toby Fox, like he valued being famous and popular online over actually producing a good product, and this is what he fucking deserves.